nice, light, bouncy Sautillé stroke of the kind that we need, for instance, in the second movement of Elgar's Cello Concerto or in many of the cello repertoire showpieces, is one of the more advanced bow strokes that every cello student I know is keen to master. So in today's video, I'm going to show you exactly how, step by step. As always, if this is your first time here, a very warm welcome to my channel. My name is Julia Morneweg, and here I try to dissect every imaginable aspect of learning how to play the cello. If you would like to find out more about me, my concerts, how to have lessons with me or participate in my online workshops, do head over to my website www.juliamorneweg.com or follow me on Instagram at cello_Julia. If you would like to support me, you can first of all subscribe, smash that like button, or if you're feeling really charitable today, you can even leave me a little tip via the coffee link below. So let's get cracking and learn how to do a good Sautillé. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of how to actually learn the Sautillé bow stroke, I first of all want to clarify some terminology. Because very often there is a bit of a confusion between the terms Sautillé and spiccato. And they sometimes get used a little bit interchangeably, also get used slightly differently sometimes in different countries, but really they are two very, very different strokes which are created very differently. The spiccato stroke, this one, is one where we really utilize the natural sort of elasticity of the string, the hair, the stick, and the bow gets thrown sort of quite consciously, and the hair is definitely leaving the string. So we vary the height and length of it, but the main feature is that the hair actually leaves the string. Now, the Sautillé, on the other hand, is created altogether differently because it doesn't start from the air, it starts very much from the string. And in fact, I actually checked this earlier using my phone's slow motion camera. I played a little bit of Sautillé, and what happens when we are playing that stroke is that by and large the hair actually remains almost exclusively on the string, and it's very much the stick that bounces. And the Sautillé stroke is really just a descendant of the détaché stroke. Yeah, so it starts very much from the string and just becomes ever more focused on the balance point of the bow. So that is the first thing to understand. So when we are playing Sautillé, there is no kind of throwing involved at all. It's very much originates on the string. And it's also obviously worth saying that what really sets these two apart is that the spiccato will only work up to a certain speed, because we are consciously having to use the arm to do that, and there is an upper ceiling as to how fast that'll work, whereas the Sautillé has got a lower ceiling below it won't work. So we need to be playing at a certain speed for that takeoff to happen. So that's the first distinction that we really need to understand. So I think now we are ready to actually start the process. It's funny, when I make these videos, some of them literally come right off the top of my head, and you know, sometimes I sit down at 11 o'clock at night and just think about something, record it in one take straight away, easy. And then there are others where I really spend some quite considerable time thinking about how do I best explain this process and how do I best explain this topic. And this one here, the Sautillé, definitely falls into the latter category, because I so want to make sure that I explain it in the most sort of concise and way that is easy to understand and recreate. And sort of while I was mulling that over, one thing really struck me, and that is that the process of learning Sautillé in the right hand is actually not at all dissimilar to the process of learning vibrato in the left hand. Because the one thing they both have in common is that they both look like there's an awful lot of fast activity going on, when actually both of them are based on the same principles. Good balance, impulse, and complete release. And the oscillation in both cases that you see in the left hand, the vibration of the hand, in the right hand, this sort of burst of short little bow strokes. Both are derived from the same source, and that is really good balance, completely relaxed muscles, and one good kick. So we are going to do with the Sautillé exactly what we did when I taught you vibrato in another video, which is we are first of all going to put it under the magnifying glass and really blow it up to much bigger proportions, and from that we are going to make it smaller and smaller and smaller until we arrive at the final stroke. As I already mentioned a couple of minutes ago, the Sautillé is entirely derived from the détaché bow stroke. So in order to master Sautillé, you first of all need to have an absolutely impeccable détaché technique. So if that is something where there are perhaps still gaps, then do make sure I'm putting the link right up here in the top right corner. Check out my video on how to learn a proper lower arm détaché first, because if that isn't working, Sautillé is never going to happen. So now, provided that that is already working, that's exactly what we are going to start off with. And first of all, I'm going to use the metronome here to assist that process. So I'm going to start with my metronome on at a moderate pace. I think I'm going to turn it on 80. So, and I'm going to play group the semiquavers. Da, 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 da. So as you can see, I'm very much just hinging from my upper arm. Just letting this off for a second. My upper arm is completely settled here, and I'm just hinging from my lower arm, like so. Yeah, really just kicking, especially on the first of the four notes. Yes, I'm putting the metronome back on. And bit by bit, we're going to up the tempo. So we're going to go up to 90. So I'm still really properly working here, and bit by bit by bit, we're going to take that up a little bit further to 100. So already at that speed, what's really important here is that everything is loose. Everything is loose. So my hold on the bow is really, I mean, feather light touch, so that all the muscles here, the fingers are really just hanging. They're like seaweed. Yeah, so the arm is a tight here, the fingers are just, they're just a seaweed. So you so make sure especially that the thumb is very, very light on the bow, and your lower arm should really be hinging from the elbow like a rag doll. It's just completely loose and dangly. So you've got that. Now, as you keep going up, And it's important to say here is never go any higher in the speed than the speed at which you can maintain that looseness, yeah? So, and that might take a matter of days, weeks, whatever. So, so already now, you see, I'm approaching the point, a speed now, where this is actually quite hard work, yeah? So I'm more and more tempted now to, you know, actively playing 4 notes becomes quite difficult now. So I'm already giving a good kick on the first and then easing off. So you can see throughout, the one thing that's really important here is a pronation. So you see that I am very much leaning inwards. So these ones here aren't doing very much at all. They're just there. Yeah, but everything is really there. And this stroke, you know, you want to be pretty much sort of at the balance point of the bow, yeah, where it feels nice and light. So that is usually somewhere round about, so just below the middle, but it will vary depending on your bow. If I tried this with 3 different bows that I own, they would all be in a slightly different place. So check that out. So I now got up to 110. I'm going to up it again to 120. And now let's see. Haha, so now you can hear that if I try, I'm not going to just for a laugh now, just try doing everything with my arm. So you see that A sounds quite rough, and it's really hard work. I wouldn't be able to sustain that for terribly long. So instead, what do we do instead? So I am now starting to only give 1 kick on the first of 4 notes and relax, and let the rest literally just do it like you do with a vibrato with residual momentum. In fact, I'm not just noticing, I'm not even just doing every 4 anymore. I'm almost just doing 1 and 8. So and now at that speed, you should be getting to the point where you should just feel that the bow is starting to almost jump a little bit. This is now the sort of 120 is sort of the border region, I would call it. Now we're going up to 130. And now you can, for the first time, really hear the separation. So there is really now the difference between sort of sticking to the string and like these little sort of bubbles coming out, yeah? So now once we are in that, and as you can see now, I'm using ever less bow. As I'm going up in speed, it becomes more and more focused, and the kick, it's almost, I don't even have time anymore to do a sort of proper lower arm kick. It's literally a twitch that almost now, it comes from sort of, I still feel it in my arm, but it almost looks like it just comes from here, it just comes sort of flick of the wrist kind of. Yeah, so if I now go up a little bit more, 140, let's have a look. So now you can hear I'm properly off the string, yeah? So you see that isn't even moving anymore. Yeah, I don't have the time for it anymore. Everything is almost like I'm just on the spot. Tiny flick, good balance. And then almost the faster you go, the easier the stroke almost becomes, yeah? So like what you would have, let's say in Elgar, yeah, that kind of very, very, very light. So that is the process. Now, as with the vibrato, you are probably not going to be able to learn this in a day or even a week. It's something that is a process. So you work your way up these speeds bit by bit by bit, only ever to the point where you can control it, you can do it evenly, and where everything stays completely relaxed. It's very simple, because if there is one muscle in there that's tense, the stroke is not going to work, it's not going to take off. Yeah, so you really need to first of all build that complete looseness, and then finally once the looseness is there, the right sort of the right pronation, the right elbow level, the right tilt is there, and the right part of the bow, all of a sudden, click, you will have it. But as with the vibrato, as I said there right from the beginning, it's going to take patience and an incredible level of attention to correct technique in order to master that. Now let's briefly talk about how do we then coordinate that with the left hand. Yeah, so you want to learn a piece like, let's say, the second movement of the Elgar or Davidov's Fountain or something like that. And you know, so how do I coordinate the two things with you know, that stroke on the left hand? And the simple answer is that when you're learning these pieces, for the first, I would say 90% of the learning process, the bow jumping is the absolutely least of your worries, because all of these pieces have to be learned with a textbook détaché stroke in order for them to work later on at speed. So when I'm practicing, let's say, the second movement of the Elgar, what the practice will look like is and boring like that, over and over and over and over. And so I will start vastly under speed. What is important that I'm already using the right part of the bow, the right amount of bow. Okay, you will obviously, when you're doing it slow, you will use a little bit more than you will be doing at final speed, but by no means a lot of bow. So I make sure the coordination is right, that I really know, especially in the other, which note is on the first, if the first of the group of four. Very, very important. And we are going to work through the entire thing like that. And then how do I get faster? I never just sort of up the metronome and force myself to get faster, because that doesn't go anywhere. When I'm learning something, I take the cue to get faster and up the metronome really from my brain. The time to go faster is when you feel that because you know, playing fast is, for the hands to play fast is not difficult. For the brain to play fast is, for the brain it's difficult to play fast. When I feel that I'm always comfortably 1 or 2 steps ahead in my brain, that everything, you know, I feel my brain feels really relaxed doing all the actions. Once I'm at that stage, and funny enough, once you get to that stage, you almost subconsciously start to speed up a little bit. So never try to go beyond what your brain can comfortably do, because you will simply start undoing a lot of good work. Yeah. So have the patients just do the right thing over and over and over. And of course, there will always be passages that need far more work than others. And then there are also different techniques we can use with using different impulses, and then trying to play at speed for very, very short bursts initially. But really, first of all, the bread and butter work to get the notes under our fingers is done on the string with a détaché bow stroke, and really only when the whole left hand learning process is complete, and then the stroke will pretty much, once you are playing as we did earlier with the metronome, once you get to that speed, the stroke will take off almost by itself. So that's really almost the last thing you have to worry about there. Now lastly, perhaps just a couple of recommendations of sort of how to, what material to use to practice a stroke on. And of course, one thing that I would always suggest is make use of your scales to practice those strokes. Yeah, so you can, you know, play each note initially even 8 times. So on. Then you can do it. You can do it 4 times. So that's a really, really good idea, especially, you know, going all the way up. And always make sure when shifts get in the way, you need to follow the right hand. So this is going to continue like a bulldozer. Left hand has to fit in. So that's one thing that is really useful to do. You can also have a look at good old Feuillard here. And there are some really useful full exercises in part 5 of the book here in the bowing exercises, initially just on 1 string, and then also crossing the string on 2 strings. So that's something I would recommend. And then usually the first piece that I tend to give students to sort of apply the Sautillé on is a very charming little piece by the composer Daniel van Goens. He wrote quite a lot of cello pieces. His scherzo. And God, I haven't played in a very long time, but starts like that. Yeah, so you can. I might make a, maybe at some point, a whole video on that piece. Have to dig it out again and practice it again. But I remember, I think that was the first piece I learned it, really practiced the Sautillé on. And yeah, so and then obviously from that, once you have a little bit more under your belt, you can look at things like Davidov's Fountain, and you know, working yourself up bit by bit to more difficult things like the Elgar, and then obviously, you know, Elfantans and things like that. But that's a very, very, very long process. So initially, just be really patient with it. It's a stroke you can't force. Make sure you get the process right, the practice process right, the technique right, and then bit by bit it's going to come. and you're going to have a lot of fun with that stroke. As always, any questions you have, pop them into the comments section below. I always love to hear from you, and in the meantime, I hope to see you again for another video. Cheerio!